Chasing the Rainbows with your host, Bernice Quisenberry.
On this week's podcast episode of Coming Up for Air, it is about the fourth stage of grief called reorganization and recovery. It is with Bree and B today. Thank you.
Hello.
Yes,
Thanks for having me.
Yes. So the previous 3 episodes that we did were the first phase, shock and numbness, the second phase, which is searching and yearning, and the third phase of grief, disorganization and despair. Like we mentioned in our other podcast, grief is an extremely personal experience, and our goal is to let other fellow survivors out there know who are going through this, however you feel or whatever you're going through, you are not alone. And that's why we are sharing our own personal experiences.
Yep, that's why we're here.
Yes. So in this final phase, this is where, I felt like, and Bree, you can shed some light on this too, I started to live in my new normal life.
Yeah.
And it was a hard reality pill to swallow, I think. But it also started to bring out some more brighter days ahead, if that makes sense.
No, it absolutely does. I definitely, in this stage, I can't recall it being like all of a sudden one day I woke up and I'm in this stage.
Yeah.
I don't know how it was for you, but it was a gradual where
Yes.
each day got a little bit brighter. The sky was a little bluer, and I wasn't just sitting in my grief day after day. It kind of gradually happened. Is that how it was for you too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I would feel too, it took me some time, and some days I still feel like maybe I am in this stage a little bit. Not that it's like the emotional roller coaster every day, but still that I am still adjusting to our new normal life.
Well, I think it takes time. I think it's
Yeah.
not something that just happens overnight. And
Right.
even still, with me being 8 years out and 10 years out from our stillbirths, I think there's still days where I'm reminded of my kids and that I lost, and like you're still kind of working through it. And I think this stage lingers. It's almost like this stage is forever. I know it's a stage of grief,
Right.
but it's kind of on the other side of grief. Like I feel like it can go on for, I mean, really forever, because you're going to constantly be working through your emotions. But I think you're not sitting in your emotions day after day necessarily.
Yes, absolutely. And I felt like, let's definitely get into that, in a little bit here, but also, like interests, like I started to be able to enjoy different things or find things that brought me joy, and also my energy level. Like I finally started to feel like I wasn't in that obsessing mode, and also like my emotions weren't just draining me.
Yes.
That I could like invest energy in other things.
Yes, and in people. I don't know about you, but like
Right.
I really clammed up for the first 3 stages of this grief.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't want to be around people. It was draining because you had to put on a face that you were fine, or maybe you weren't fine, and like, you just couldn't bear to be around other people because you didn't want to have to, act a certain way or whatever. But in this 4th stage, I think I finally started to feel like we always talk about the wounded bird, right?
Yeah.
Like you're kind of you're getting past that point where people aren't looking at you because you're starting to be able to interact and have somewhat of not a regular, I mean, you're never going to be normal again,
Or the same person that you were
Yes,
before the
absolutely.
loss. Yeah,
But I think
absolutely.
you're starting to be able to have the strength and energy to be around people again.
Right. And, I was reading, grief is something that happens without choice, and it's in multiple articles, and I feel as though that it was true and that it is beyond our control. It's not something I
Absolutely.
consciously was like, going through these phases, okay, ready to hop to the next phase. Like, it
Right.
was something I naturally did.
Yeah, no, it's
Would you agree
totally
with that?
natural. Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think it's a natural response. Anytime you go through something or lose somebody that you love, I think it's natural you grieve. It comes on. It's right. There's no choice in it. It's not like you said, you're going to, okay, I am now entering stage 1 of grief, and now I will go and exit and go into stage 2. So I completely agree with you. And I think everyone's different as far as timing on their, the grief.
Yeah.
But to go through grief itself is 100%
Right.
not a choice. It's just something we experience.
I know. And in that same breath, so as I was reading, different articles and things like that. They're saying with the reorganization recovery phase that this does involve some choice, which I find interesting, just because I don't necessarily know if I agree with that.
Okay. What is it that they say that you don't agree with?
So I get this part, right? Like fully accepting the loss of our baby, which, I started to do that in the previous phases as well, because I knew this was our new reality and we had to live with it. Coming to terms with what happened. Yep. Started working through that, have been working through it, searching for answers, all of that stuff, right? Getting and then coming to terms with some of the answers we weren't going to get.
Yeah.
And then choosing to go on, as in not that we're ever going to move on,
Right.
but go on with life, because what other choice do we have?
Yeah.
Right. And so, like, now I obviously needed trauma therapy to help work through some of the events of everything that happened, because it was traumatic for me. I don't know if you felt like yours was, but
Yeah, I think I would say that the loss that we experienced with Landon and Emma, the events, I wouldn't classify them as traumatic necessarily. It was very challenging, obviously, and sad, and we were grief-stricken. But the events themselves kind of played out in a non-traumatic way. It was more of like a natural progression of how things happened. I wouldn't classify it as traumatic,
right.
but still obviously difficult.
Right.
I think, anybody who has lost a baby, or
It's horrific.
it's horrific. It's a terrible thing to walk through. And so, yeah, I think it's interesting how there's different perspectives on if it's traumatic, classified as traumatic or not.
Right. And different articles and things like that. And it is. It's really interesting to get takes. And I think it's so personal to each lost survivor.
Well, and that's just the thing.
Through.
Grief itself is very personal. So, like, however you view the loss of your baby,
right.
It's okay. Like, I think there's no right or wrong, traumatic, not traumatic,
right.
Like, I feel like it's so personal for everybody on the impact that it has in their life. And I always hesitate when I hear people kind of judging others of how they're walking through their grief.
Exactly.
And like they classified it as traumatic, or they didn't classify it as traumatic, or they're on stage 2 already. Like, gosh, shouldn't they still be in stage 1? Like, It's so personal. And I just caution anyone to judge, no matter what the loss is. Don't judge people on how they're walking through this, different stages.
Well, right. And some might not, their body might not be going through the grief process, or might take years until all of a sudden they experience it, or whatever that looks like for them. But it is so personal, and each person handles things differently too.
Yep.
That, I completely agree with you, Bree, on that. And, but something that, was really like, this is the part here that I had a hard time, like almost swallowing, was, that there needed to become a time when you needed to consciously let go of the pain. And I feel like this is kind of contradicting with how grief and how we respond is beyond our control.
Yeah.
So I found it really hard to...
I have a hard time with that too. I feel like they almost make it sound like you snap your fingers and you're letting go of the pain. Like, that's not how it happens.
No.
I feel like letting go of pain is gradual, and I feel like there's always going to be pain there.
Right.
I think about Landon and Emma, and like, it hurts my heart to think about them. I think there's still a level of pain there, but the way that it's worded, it almost sounds like, and I'm releasing my pain. Like, that's not how it happens. It's a gradual, I think it's time.
Right. Like, time takes time.
Yes.
And it does. And that's why, I think this, like you said in the beginning, like, this phase is drawn out, because it does really take time.
It does.
And I wouldn't even say that it's letting go. It's almost like we're naturally doing it. Like, our minds emotionally, mentally are able to.
Yes. I think it's like you're, in this phase, your pain gradually becomes less and less the center of your universe. So when you first lose your child, all you can think about, sleep, eat, breathe, everything you think about is surrounded by the loss that you just experienced.
Absolutely.
But I think with time, eventually, while you still think about them a lot, the pain isn't the center of your universe anymore.
Right.
And you're able to kind of, like in this phase, you're the sky's a little bluer. You're able to start enjoying life a little bit more again.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely think that's
I know. I found that
a weird
really,
statement that it's it just makes it sound instantaneous, and it certainly is not.
Yeah, I didn't feel like that either. So I'm glad we're on the same page with that. But and obviously, no matter how we feel, what we believe, or how we process grief, this doesn't just happen overnight, like what you said, and it's not something instantaneous. And some days, I feel like I'm going off the road a little bit, or off the rails, know, and I have more good days than bad days now, but still I have those not so good days.
Yeah, and I think that's important that you said that, because it's okay to circle back to stage number 3, right? If you're in 4, there's gonna be days where you circle back a little bit,
back to 2
or 1 even,
or
where
1,
you're like, and I think that's important to state, because it's not like you go to 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you're in the clear.
Yeah.
Like,
then you're good.
Like I said, 8, 10 years later, I still find myself circling back. There's still days where something hits me, and it's like I relive it all over again.
Yeah.
And I circle back, but then I work through it again, and it's okay to do that. There's nothing wrong with you. I think that's part of just processing everything that's happened.
Right. And I think now when those, bad days are happening and I am circling back, or, having that roller coaster of emotions, like I'm able to like sit there and actually process it in a healthy manner, because like being through it already almost, like, okay, I got to recall the events that happened. I have to recall this. Like I need to remind myself of different things.
Yeah.
But then also like, I know what I enjoy doing now too to cope, because like I found that out during this grief process, right? Because like what I enjoyed before was completely different than what I enjoy now.
Yeah. And I think that's, and I've made the statement before, that our loss of Landon in 2013, to me was a lot more challenging than when we lost Emma in 2016. Not because I was more sad losing him, but because I had walked through the stages of grief with Landon, and I was almost better equipped, because I knew like what I needed to process and what worked for me. So I feel like I went through the stages a little quicker with Emma. But again, it's not because I was not sad that I lost her, but it's because I had the experience of losing Landon, which helped me walk through the loss of Emma.
Which I believe makes complete sense.
Yeah.
And I also feel like, through our experience of losing our daughter, I feel like I was given a new, and I know I've said this numerous times, like a new life, a new outlook, a new perspective on life and what is truly important today.
Oh, man, absolutely. It definitely puts things into perspective. And I just, and I love what you said. You're so vulnerable in the last podcast when you talked about how you almost felt guilty because people would come to you with their problems and you're like, this is nothing. You almost like you have this perspective of what is true grief and heartache. And I can't think of anything worse than losing a child, so, and I loved how you were very vulnerable and said how you felt when people came to you with their, what to you was insignificant given what you've gone through.
Right.
And how it was hard to sympathize with people, at that part. But it's so true. It does give you a new perspective, and it makes you cherish things a little bit more, I think, knowing that what it's like to truly lose someone you love, your baby and your child, and just learning to love things more when you have them and appreciate it more.
Yeah. And I think we're realizing too, that life isn't guaranteed and life can be short, and, we never know when our day's coming.
Yeah, absolutely.
After going through something like this. So I think we do appreciate it, like you said. And I feel like, I was actually in this phase, like we kind of talked about, like we were like, I was actually genuinely able to laugh again, smile again.
Yeah.
And listen to someone speaking, like actively listening.
Yeah.
I could not do that really in the other 3 phases.
Oh my gosh, my mind was just like,
after like a couple seconds, I was already space cadet.
Yep.
Yeah, I was already like, I'm already off in my own little world and obsessing about what was going on,
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that was like the best thing I think that could have came out of this phase for me, is that I could genuinely feel that deep belly laugh again.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And without guilt, too.
Right.
Because I know,
Right.
for, like, if I did that
Oh my gosh,
before,
yes.
I would instantly feel like I shouldn't be doing this. Why am I
Correct.
laughing? Like, I'm in mourning. Like, I can't laugh.
Yes.
You know, you feel guilty over laughing. But I think in this stage, you start to, you're okay with laughing again. You start to see the humor in life, and you start to,
Yes.
you know, and without the guilt.
Right.
So I think that's a beautiful thing that you can start to do that again.
I think so too. And you know, I also felt like, you know, we weren't, like we mentioned, weren't fully consumed in our grief day to day
Yeah.
anymore. Like, it was starting to loosen up
Yes.
as days went on.
Yes.
And that, you know, I could, you know, do these kind of things, like have family game night and actually be sitting there presently enjoying it.
Yes,
You know,
and
those kind of
and
things.
your mind is also present, not just physically present, but mentally present and aware. And yeah, I definitely think, like I said, I keep going back to the guilt thing, but like a lot of that before, it's almost like I'd feel guilty if I was doing a family game night, or,
Right.
you know, I don't know. Isn't that strange though? How you
know.
feel guilty about doing things that you're supposed to be doing anyways, but
I know.
I don't know.
I know you do. And I think, you know, it all goes back to, because it's without our baby, right?
Yeah,
and,
right.
And we're just adjusting to our new life, because
Yeah.
when we were having those family game nights previously, or doing whatever, like, we envisioned it with our baby
Yeah.
being there, and our baby should have been
Yes,
there.
absolutely.
And then when they aren't, and that gets taken away from us, it's like everything, it's just
a
a
reminder.
process.
Yeah.
It's a reminder. It's a process to work through.
Yep.
Like, okay, we're going to go on our first family vacation without our baby.
Yes.
Like, okay, you know, and all those things.
Yeah, and and you know, like I said, we're 8 and 10 years out from our stillbirths, and I still think about what grades would my child be in, and
Yes.
like what would they be doing?
The
Would they
back
be
to
in
school
sports?
pictures, yes.
Yeah, like I have friends and family who are the same ages
Yes.
that Landon and Emma would have been, and
Yeah.
like I can't help but I see those photos of the back to school photos and think,
Right.
gosh, I should be doing that right now.
Right. And they should be the other two additions
Yes.
to, you know, your family
Yeah.
and things like that. Yeah. And I don't think that'll ever, at least for me,
No,
will ever go
it'll
away.
never stop.
Yeah. Yeah. And we just went through this too. I was sharing in support group the other day, like we were at the beach, and I saw a girl who was, you know, 2.5 years old.
Yeah.
And or around that age, and seeing what she was doing and what activities she was doing, and she was like right near where we were staying, so like I got to see her a lot on the beach and everything, and I was just like, oh my gosh, that would be Brooke right now.
Yeah.
You know, and like like it just takes me right back to that, and then, you know, trying to enjoy the beach, you know, and things like that, but you know, it's almost bittersweet,
Yeah.
because you know, I'm enjoying it, but yet, you know, missing Brooke.
Yeah, and but I think that's an important highlight of this stage, though, because
Right.
while you still have those thoughts and you
Right.
still work through that
Right.
pain,
Right.
that takes time and isn't
Yes.
instantaneous.
It's not an instant click.
It's still like you are still able to enjoy your family that's at the beach and
Yes.
like have a good time without guilt. So like you
Yes.
probably see that little girl and you're like, gosh, Brooke, should, you know, this is how Brooke would be,
Yes.
and she should be here and doing this. But then you're able to go out to dinner and like
Yes.
you don't sit in the pain anymore.
Right. It's
like,
more envy and jealousy
Yes,
than it is like the
yes,
guilt or
yes.
the obsession. Like then I'm questioning. I don't go down that spiral of questioning every.
Yep.
Now that does come some days.
Sure.
But it didn't come then. And it was more just like, oh, like I wonder what she would look like. You know, those kind of things. Like and I get to
Yes.
think about like, oh, I wonder what she
not
would be
all
doing.
consuming
Yes. And
pain.
it's like almost like as beautiful as it can be,
Yes.
I guess, if that makes any sense.
makes total sense.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, you know, after any like trauma, crisis, life-changing event, like us survivors have gone through, you know, it does change you. And I feel like, you know, even though I survived it, you survived it, Brie, you know, survivors out there. And it felt like at times like the pain would just be so overbearing that we couldn't get through it almost. And some days I felt like I would still suffer, and that there wouldn't be any light. Like I wouldn't come up for air.
Oh yeah.
And from not having our baby here with us. And then when like it started to break a little bit and I started to just feel that little bit of sense of almost relief from the daily pain, it it was, I'm trying to think about the word, like how to use it. Like it almost just made me feel like, not like a sense of relief, but like a sense of like, okay, this is going to be okay. Like life is going to be okay.
Like some hope.
Yes, some hope. Hope is what I was looking
Yes.
for, not relief.
You
It
have
was like hope.
Yes.
Yes, you have hope again,
Yes.
you know?
That you're going to get through it.
Yes.
Brighter days are ahead.
Yes.
And yeah, when you start to see the clouds clear a little bit and the sun starting to peek through,
Yes.
I think those are the moments that really you got to hold on to, because you're
Yes.
still going to have your days. Like you're at the beginning
Yes.
stages of this. And,
Oh, yeah.
but knowing when you see those rays of sunshine come through, that's hope. And that's something to look forward to hold on to, and to cherish when it happens, because, you know, the clouds will part,
Right.
and,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to be okay. But it's hard to see that in the beginning. But
It
when you
is.
do start to
It
get
is.
those glimmers of hope, it definitely perks you up a little bit, knowing that you're going to be all right.
It does. And, you know, I had a really hard and difficult time actually with the reorganization phase. As in, I was not good with fully expressing my emotions and feelings
Ooh.
before losing Brooke, or knowing like what to ask for or anything like that. And even during this whole grief process, and now being a little bit further out, I feel like I'm better with it, but I could not communicate at all in a productive and effective
during
way.
this stage.
Yep. Could not do
Yeah.
it, especially in the beginning of it. Like, not at all.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to.
Yeah, no, I think I was probably the same way. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think we're still processing and working
Right.
through stuff. So I think because we're in this phase doesn't mean that you're going to be able to have the right words to
Right.
express how you're feeling.
Right.
I think some people in general struggle with that more than others. I definitely struggle with that in general, with just saying how I feel and
Right.
like
Yeah.
communicating my
Yeah.
needs. So I think add grief into that,
Yeah.
and it just makes it very challenging.
Absolutely. And I think something that I did to kind of I wouldn't say overcome this or like work through it. How I worked through it was, one was helping others. I felt like if I was helping someone else go through something or help
Yeah.
them in a time of need,
Yeah.
that helped me to like almost get out of myself and out of my
Sure.
own way.
Oh, 100% agree with
Right?
you on that. I mean, that's like my life mission is
Yes.
to use my experiences to
Yes.
help other people walk through those same experiences. And
Right.
I think it does. It gives you a sense of purpose,
Right.
which is so huge in your self-worth and, being able to move forward, not moving
Yes.
on, but moving forward.
Right.
And just helping others. And there's a sense of, not pride, but just you feel good when you can take what you've gone through and help somebody else. And I think finding the words that to express yourself kind of does come with that,
Yeah.
because you know what you needed in that time. So now you're able to kind of communicate that with somebody else.
Absolutely. So I couldn't have said that any better, Brie. I feel like that was completely, oh my goodness. Yeah, you just nailed it spot on, but you're so right. And also I, like outside of just like wanting to help others and that, like I actually started to pick up the phone and call people to check in on them.
Yes.
Because they did that a lot, on me, like the ones that were truly there for me and just were there to listen and there to support us. And like I started to do that.
Yeah.
And like, even though they were telling me about what's going on in their world and I just wanted to hear that,
Yeah.
it took me away from myself for
Yes.
like a little bit, where I felt like I was being
You're
an
serving
active-
other people.
Yes,
And there's
yes.
something they say, like, serving other people, you get outside of your own problems and your
Right.
own like self, and you're serving others, and it takes you away from, and it gives you perspective of like, gosh, the world doesn't revolve around me.
Right.
And like
right.
there's so many people that have problems and
Right.
issues and things that they're working through, and
Right.
you're able to now
Finally.
finally
Yes.
and recognize that their
Yes.
problems are problems.
Right. They're not just, like the final, like
Yes.
goodbye isn't just the be all end all problem in the world.
Exactly.
No, but it is true. And like being able to help them work through it or process their own issue, and just being there to support and
Yeah.
stuff like that,
Yeah.
know.
I
Yeah.
love that.
Oh, me too. I'm so glad we talked about that. But, like I also felt like, life had a new purpose and a direction that we went in, and it was grander and larger than I could ever have imagined before our loss.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think it goes back to the whole perspective thing, right? So
Right.
like you have this fresh perspective, and yes, we went through something very horrible,
Right.
traumatic
Yes.
for some, and
Right.
but now you just have this like new perspective, and it really, I don't know, you digest things a little bit different.
You do.
For
You do.
sure.
You handle things a lot differently. I almost
Yeah.
have more patience now
Oh,
with
yeah.
things. And not that I wasn't a patient person, but almost like I can process different things that probably would have caused me stress
Yeah.
before.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, is that really even a big deal?
Is that even worth stressing about?
Yes,
Yeah, because
like-
now you know what true stress is.
Yes.
And what true loss is. And so, yeah, you
Yes.
kind of look at things a little different.
Absolutely. So, just coming to terms with that, but also like coming away, like I said, with values that changed because during, different phases, like I thought through everything, I analyzed everything and seeing how, what did I believe in or, how did I look at things before? And then all of a sudden it like got me to also grow closer with some of my relationships, which was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, no, well, just you and I, for example.
Oh my goodness, correct.
You know,
How could
like,
that?
yeah, we completely rekindled our friendship that
Yeah.
we hadn't seen each other in 20 years.
Yes.
And this grief. So, grief is a hard thing to walk through, but beautiful things can come out of it, I think
Right.
is a good way to put it. And like, your friendship
Right,
has been one of
absolutely.
those beautiful things. And, you got to be open to seeing those beautiful things. And I don't think you can really see that until you're in this stage of grief.
Yeah, I don't think so either. And appreciate it.
And
right?
appreciate
And
it,
fully
yeah.
appreciate. Yeah. And I think it goes back to, too, saying how important it is with building that network of survivors around you.
It's
and having
huge.
them.
It's
Yeah.
huge. To me, that was life-saving because
Yes.
I had so many people come up to me afterwards and really those were the only people I wanted to talk to because they're the
Right.
only ones who understood what I was going through. And they would come up to me and say like, hey, I went through this too. I'm here for you. And I think just having that community, that network of people who truly understand is so important because it's the only way I got through it. I think if I love my family, I love my friends,
Right.
but not all of them have experienced a loss like this. And I feel like it's different and it's unique. And having people around me who truly understood what that experience was like was immensely beneficial
Right.
to me.
Well, those feelings and thoughts.
yes.
Because you didn't have to describe it. All you had
No.
to say was, this is what I'm going through today. And they're like, I get it.
I get it.
understand.
Yes, and they truly understood what I was
Yes.
going through. And
Yes.
and I love like in some of our support groups. I mean, it happens every day where survivors are sharing and you see everyone nodding their head like they get
Yes.
it. And just having that sense of I have people who totally know what I'm going through.
Community.
The community, and it's uplifting, and I think it makes you feel less crazy.
Yes, and this was a community that I never wanted to be a part of, right?
Absolutely.
But now that we are, just the people, the survivors in it are just so beautiful.
Let's rally around
and
each
yes,
other.
and we just need to wrap each other up with our arms,
Yep.
and just give
Lift
those
each
virtual
other up,
hugs.
especially
Yes.
on those days that are really hard. It's just lifting
yes.
each other up. And, you're going to get to a point, if you're out there and you're at that point where you need to be lifted up, you will
Yes.
lift somebody up someday too. And I
Yes.
think being able to do that and rally around one another is just a beautiful thing.
It really is. Oh, well, thank you so much for being here
Thanks
today,
for having
Bree.
me.
Yeah, so tune in next Wednesday for our next episode. But also, just as a reminder, go to chasingtherainbows.org for our support services for our daily peer-to-peer virtual support groups offered all throughout the U.S. And they're daily. Also for our mentorship and any other support services we have. So we are always with you, fertility, pregnancy, and baby loss survivors. Until next time,
Thanks for listening.
thank you.